This is Gemara in Sotah Daf Lamed Beis, and we're holding in the bottom of Lamed Aleph Amid Beis, approximately 12 lines from the bottom. The first word on line is Tinan, and we're continuing discussing the din of Rav Chia. Rav Chia taught us, Haisa Shaisa, said Rav Chia, that we would allow her to drink the bitter water. So says the Gemara, Tinan. We learned in a Mishnah, continuing the discussion of the contradiction between Eidim with regard to whether this woman that already underwent Kina Yustira, she already was warned, and she was secluded. Now the question is there Eidos that she actually was Nitmeis or not, which of course would result that she would not potentially be allowed to drink the Meisaita, which is our discussion. So says this Mishnah, if we have one Eid that says that she was Nitmeis and two Eidim say she was not, Haisa, Shaisa, we were allowed to drink. What's the implication of this Mishnah? Hachad v'chad loy. But if there's one and one Eid, one says she was and one says she was not Nitmeis, Lo, Haisa, Shaisa, we will not let her drink to Yofta di Rav Chia. So says the Gemara, this is a Tiyufta on Rav Chia, because Rav Chia just taught us, if it's Eid ve'Eid, one versus one, we still would let her drink. Rav Chia responds, according to your reasoning, Ema Seifa, look at the end of the Mishnah. Shnayim Aimer Nitmeis v'Echad Aimer Lo Nitmeis. Two says she was Tamei and one says not. Lo, he says Shaisa. We will not let her drink. What's the obvious implication? The classical Reisha Seifa Stira and Diyukin Achad v'Chad Isa Shaisa. Rather, the implication of the Mishnah in such a case would be Chad v'Chad would drink. So now we have a Stira. The Mishnah blows itself up. Ella says, Rav Chia, the way that he says, you have to explain the Mishnah. Kula b'psule eidos. We have to say that the end of the Mishnah deals with psule eidos. V'Reb Nechemya hi Titania. Who's Reb Nechemya? Titania, Reb Nechemya Imer teaches Reb Nechemya kol makom shamina atayra erechad. Holach achar roiv deois. It's another very famous opinion in the world of eidos. Says Rav Chia, in a scenario that a single aid would have a credibility and an emunus. For example, like in our case of Sotah, one of the cases in Eid Echad has a believability. In such a scenario, if we have a clash, we have a new din. Says Reb Nechemya, the din is holach achar roiv. So if I have 2 versus 1, the 2 wins. We're going to go versus roiv. Va'asu, 4 lines from the bottom. Shtei nashim ve'ish echad. And therefore, in a scenario where we have edus of 2 women, that's going to win against 1 man, which of course usually is not the case. But we have a unique chiddush that we're going with roiv deois. And 2 women versus 1 man is going to be equivalent to kishnei edim be'ish echad, like 2 men versus 1 man. And that's how we're going to have to learn. The Mishnah says Rav Chia, we do not have a tiyufta on himself. Viga diamri, another way of learning this din of Rav Nechemya, 2 lines from the bottom of Laman Aleph Amid Beis, kol echad asu eid echad kasher meikara. Anytime a single aid comes and is kosher, afilu meya nashim nami kerech adami. Even if afterwards 100 women come along and they say that this Eid Echad is incorrect, they have the same status as 1 Eid. And now, according to this way of learning Rav Nechemya, v'hacha b'may askinan, closing in on the end of a very, very short parak. I'm sure some people actually probably finished the whole parak in 1 day yesterday, but here we are wrapping it up today. Says the Gemara, v'hacha b'may askinan, and how are we going to learn the Mishnah? Kegoin de'asai isha meikara. That the case in the Mishnah is going to be that a woman or a different type of aid came in first, not a kosher aid. If a kosher aid came in first, then that's the case that we just said, that the kosher aid is going to be believed even against 100 subsequent aid. But if a non-kosher aid came in first, like a woman or someone else, and then non-kosher aid says what? Says that the Sotah was nitmeis, and then another non-kosher edim, 2 women again come in and argue, and we're going to learn Rav Nechemya as follows. Rav Nechemya Omer, Kol Makim Sheminu Teirei Echad, Halach Achar Roiv Deus. In this scenario, again, we have one non-kosher Eid, and then we have a second and a third non-kosher Eid. And then what happens? That's where Rav Nechemya teaches us. We go basar roiv deos, and therefore vasu shtei nashim v'isha achas, and therefore we make a scenario: 2 women versus 1 woman, kishnei an nashim v'isha echad, like 2 men versus 1 man, and therefore the 2 women will be believed. Roiv deos. We go with the majority of people. Aval, however, if I have shtei nashim b'ish echad, that's going to be the status of ki palga upalga. So a completely different way of interpreting Rav Nechemya, that it has to do with, do we have a verified aid first? If I have an ish, if I have a kosher aid, then he's bulletproof. No one can touch him. But if I don't, but rather I have an isha, I have a woman who comes first, then if afterwards 2 aidim come, 2 women, excuse me, those 2 women will win, because that's the aside of Rav Nechemya ki palga upalga damya, that we're going to go after the roiv deyoy. So now the Gemara asks on Rav Chia, you, Rav Chia, just taught us that the end of the Mishnah is going with this Yesod of Rav Nechemya, this Yesod of Halach Achar Roiv Deyois, V'tarti b'psulei eidos lamali. Ask the Gemara, based on the way that you, Rav Chia, are learning the Mishnah comes out to be repetitive. Because the Mishnah is teaching me 2 cases that both have the same Yesod of Psulei Eidos. So answers Rav Chia, and we wrap up the Perek, Mahu Tetema. You know what the Chiddush is? I would have thought, Ki Azlina Basar Roiv Deis L'chomra. Maybe only when we're coming to be Machmir. That's when the Yesod, the idea of Rav Nechemya, teaches me that you go Basar Roiv Deis. And parenthetically, those who are holding in Yavamas, unfortunately not myself, will understand that Taisus is asking from a Gemara in Yavamas, etc., that seems to contradict this. But either way, concludes the Gemara, Avol lekula loy. Maybe you would think that Rav Nechemya's Yesod of Roiv Deos does not help us. Lekula lo yazlinan. Therefore, explains Rav Chia kamash lo yazlinan kamash malan, that even in a case of Roiv Deos, what will the halacha be? Even in the case of, lekula, will go basa Roiv Deos. And this is how Rav Chia sticks to his own. Let's just do the full wrap up. That's where Rav Chia is going to explain our Mishnah, that if I have aid versus aid, we still will let her drink the Mei Sotah. Hadron alach mishakina, a quick perek, a good impetus for a quick chazara. And with that, we dive straight into, we turned off myself, not the confetti. Where's the confetti? There it is. Says the Gemara, and with that, we dive straight into the 7th perek, which those who see is in reality a massive Mishnah that's going to take us for this entire Amud. Says the Mishnah, Elu ne'amarim b'chol lashain. The following is able to be said in any language. Now this is really going to start, as you'll see, the first entity that can be said in any language is Parshas Sotah. But where this is going to lead us into the klalistic idea that any time you have to say something lahalacha, does it have to be in Hebrew? Or could it be, does it have to be in Lashon HaKodesh? Or could it be in any language? So says the Mishnah, Elu, the following entities could be said, in any language. Parshas Sotah is number 1, Videi Meister is number 2, Kriyas Shema is number 3, Tefillah is number 4, Birchas HaMazon is number 5, Shuas Eidos is number 6, Shuas HaPikadon for the Baz is number 7. 7 entities you could say in any language. And the Mishnah continues, the following items have to be said only in Lashon HaKodesh. Mikra Bikurim, when you read over the Parsha Bikurim. V'chalitza, when one performs chalitza. Brachais uklalais. The brachas and the klalais in the Torah. The brachas and the klalais, this is referring to by Har Grizim and Har Evil, that they had to say over the brachas and klalais. Berachas Kayhanim or Berachas Kayin Gadol, or Parshas HaMelech or Parshas Eglah Arufa. U'Mashuach Melchama, his speech that he gets. B'Shashem Medaber Elam, the time that he ignites the people to galvanize them for war. End of list. So we have 7 that have to be said b'chol lashon, and then we have this list which I lost count of that have to be said in lashon hakodesh. Says the Mishnah, 5 lines from the wide lines. Mikra bikurim keitzad. What is the case of mikra bikurim that has to be done in Hebrew? And we quote the pasuk v'nisa amarta, and I stand and I say lefnei Hashem Elokeichem. You should speak and say before Hashem your God. And elsewhere by the klolis and the brachas, it says Vanu Alvim Vamru, and the Levim answer and they say, So Malahalon B'Lashon HaKodesh, Avkan B'Lashon HaKodesh. And that's where we see where the Bikurim have to be B'Lashon HaKodesh. Number 2 was Chalitza. How do we know Chalitza in the last narrow line has to be in Lashon HaKodesh? Says the pasuk Vansa V'Amru. And we see that we keep on coming back to our Grizim and our Evil, the brachas and the klolis, as the quintessential example. It has to be in Lashon HaKodesh. And we keep on equating that when the Torah says V'Amru by Bikurim, V'Amru by Chalitza, Malalan B'Lashon HaKodesh, Avkan B'Lashon HaKodesh. Rav Yehuda Imer comes along Rav Yehuda, and he has a different makar. V'Ansa V'Amra, that what it says by Chalitza, she answers and she says, Kocha. That what? Such is what she has to say by Chalitza. And from here we learn out, Kocha, Ashet Amar B'Lashon Hazeh. Now we go to the root cause. Brachos v'klalis keitzad. We already sourced brachos and klalos 2 times as the entity that has to be in Lashon HaKodesh. Asks the Mishnah, how do you know? Kim Shavi Yisrael as they Yarden, when Klal Yisrael crossed over, they Yarden Bal Har Grizim, Val Har Eval, and they came to Har Grizim and Har Eval Shebishamroim, Shebitzad Shchem, Shebeitzel, Eloine Mamrei. In the Shamrom next to Shar Shchem and Eitzal Eloine Mamrei. Interrupts the Mishnah, and the Mishnah says, 1 second, how do we know it was near Shechem? Moira, it's a Eloni Moira. Shenemar, Haloihema, Be'ever Ayardim V'koimer. Ula Halonu Oimer, V'yavra Avram, Be'eret, Ad Mokoim Shechem, Ad Eloin Moira. So my Eloin Moira, Omer Halon is Shechem. So now we know the placement of Har Grizim and Har Eval is where? Next to, adjacent to Shechem. So continues the Gemara telling us the story of Har Grizim and Har Eval, the brachas and the klalis. 10 lines to the end of the Amud. The first 1 line is Shisha. Shisha Shvatim al Rosh Har Grizim, 6 Shvatim went up to Har Grizim. Shisha Shvatim al Rosh Har Eval, 6 Shvatim went to Har Eval. V'hakoyanim v'levim v'aroin, hakoyanim levim and the aroin, hakodesh, are situated in the middle. You have 6 Shvatim on one mountain, 6 Shvatim on the other mountain. B'emza hakoyanim hakifin es aroin. Excuse me. V'kahanim v'alevim v'aron oimdim l'mata b'hemsa. V'hakoyanim makivin es aron. So you have the aron. The kohanim surround the aron. Now levim es kohanim, and the levim surround the kohanim. V'chai Yisrael mikanim lekanim gans klal Yisrael is on the 2 mountains. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, v'chol Yisrael, and the entirety of klal Yisrael is the king of a shayt of a shayftov. What comes next? They turned their heads. Who is they? The Kehanim and Levim that are standing on the bottom surrounding the Aron HaKodesh. Turn their heads and face the Har Grizim. They open up a brach and they give brachas. Baruch Asher lo yaseh pesel maseichel, blessed the man does not make avodah zar. Ve'elu, and they all answered, Ainin, Amen. They turned all the way. They start cursing. Ararish, cursed is the man that does and makes an avodah zara. Until they finished the entire list of brachas and klalos of the Torah. And afterwards, they brought the stones, they built a mizbech, and they covered over with lime, with plaster, with sid. And they inscribe, they write upon it, upon this mizbech that's covered in sid, all the words of the Torah in 70 languages. Shenemar Be'er Heitiv, as the pasuk says, it's Be'er Heitiv, it's perfectly clear and enunciated in all 70 languages. They take these stones, as we turn over to Lamed Beis, they take the stones and the Banu, Velanu Be'mekaiman, they take the stones and they spend the night there. Where is there? There is in Gilgal. And with that, we learn the fascinating story of Har Grizim and Har Eval. What exactly Klal Yisrael, the Kohanim, the Levim, the Aron HaKodesh, how the Klolos were administered And with that, we continue on Lamed Beis and Beis, in which the Gemara goes into the first din in our Mishnah. The Mishnah began with the things that could be said b'chol lashon. We just explained the things that could be said in lashon hakodesh. Now we go into the things that could be said b'chol lashon. Says the Gemara, Parsha Sotah min alon. Where do we know Parsha Sotah from? Techsev says the Torah of Amar Kohen leisha. The Torah said, the Kohen says to the woman, b'chol lashon she'u oimer. From the fact that the Torah says, the Kohen says to the woman, v'amar, he talks to the woman, meaning whatever language she speaks, that is the language that she is going to say the parshas of Sotah. Continues the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. Let's discuss other entities that could also be said b'chol lashon. Mashmi and Isa b'chol lashon. Says the Gemara 4 lines down, they tell the Sotah in any language that she understands. Al mahi shaisa, they explain to her, you know what's about to happen. You know why you're drinking the mei Sotah. Obamahu shaisa. And with what you are going to drink. Al manit meis. What reason you became tamei. Ubamahi nit meis. So now the Gemara explains all these things that we just said. Etc. Says the Gemara all the things that we're explaining to the Sotah. Bechol lashon, that she is shemas, that she understands. For what reason she is drinking? What does that mean? For the fact that she was warned and secluded. With what is she drinking? What does that mean? Shel cheresh. That is, she's drinking from the dirt from an earthenware pot. No, excuse me, the flask itself is an earthenware fire pot. Aman nitmeis, what does that mean? Alisches chayk v'aldus, and the fact that she was acting immaturely and intimately with a man. Ubamayin nitmeis, and in what manner she became tamei. B'shayi b'meizid b'aynis b'ratzon. V'kol kach lama, says the Gemara. Shalahaitzi laz al mei amarim. The reason why we're doing this whole list is so that no one will talk negatively on the mei amarim. So we look at Rashi for a moment, and Rashi explains. What does it mean? If she doesn't blow up, but she did the Aveira, what's the reason? It was either an Einis or a Shayeg. So people should not think. So they explained to her clearly in what manner the water works. So we continue the Gemara about 10 lines down. Vidui Meiser. The Gemara continues quoting that which could be said b'chol lashon. One of them is the Vidui, the missions of Meiser. Says the Gemara, we know this. It says in the Torah of Amartel Hashem Elokecha bi'arti ha'kodesh min habayis. Yolif, Amir mi Sotah. We learn out the word Amir from Sotah b'chol lashon shehu oimer. Amli Rav Zid Labayo. What do you mean? As everyone's probably wondering. 1 second. The Mishnah also had a word Amir to learn out from the Levium, the brachas v'klalais, which was what? Daf lashon hakodesh. So Rav Zid says to Abaye, 1 second. V'leilav Amir mi Levium, mal alam lashon hakodesh, avkan b'lashon hakodesh. Answers the Gemara. Tanan Amira Geredasa, Amira Geredasa. We learn that Amira plain. Amira, and Amira with is by itself. Vein done in Amira Gredasa from where? From the Levium, which was what? Aniyah Amira, an answering and a saying. And the Gemara continues. Tanya Rashbi Oimer says of Shemir Yechai. Adam Oimer Shvachai Bekol Namuch. When one is saying Shvach, he's saying praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You say Bekol Namuch in a low voice. But when one is saying his disgrace, Bekol Ram. Shavach Bekol Namuch men Vidui Meiser. That's not from Vidui Meiser. Whereas Ganasa Bekol Ram in Mikra Bikurim, in which we say Bikur Bikurim. Now again, let's continue before we explain. The Ganasa Bekol Ram. Ask the Gemara, you're learning out from Bikurim that one's ganas, one's degradation, one disgrace should be said loudly from Bikurim. What is the reason? We daven quietly. So if someone has done sins, he shouldn't be embarrassed. He can say it quietly. For the fact that the Torah did not distinguish the area in which one who's bringing Aveira to one who's bringing a carbon Ayla. We don't want one to be embarrassed. So if you're bringing a carbon Chatas, you bring a carbon Ayla, you go to the same place. So in a similar vein, if one does Aveiras, he davens in a low voice. So ask the Gemara, you're telling me that Ganasai, degradation, disgrace, is B'kol Ram, but the whole reason we daven quietly is for disgrace. Answers the Gemara, we have to answer this up. Lo itema, don't explain ganasa. It doesn't mean disgrace. Elaima tsairoi. It means his troubles. Kiditani, return to the rice of it. Tamei ikra. Says the pasuk. The Mitzayra calls out Tamei Tarame. Sarchladia Tsaira the Rabbim. He's to tell others of his pain. And then the Rabbim actually of Rachmim. Chamish ira by davar sarchladia berabim. And any time someone is doing something, he should tell everyone in public. And the Rabbim mevakshin alav Rachmim. So the Gemara is changing that instead of saying that Ganasa is B'kol Ram, rather Tsaira is B'kol Ram. Meaning, Ganasa is actually quietly, as we saw from the case of Tefillah, that we don't want one to be embarrassed. So both Shvach and Genai is quietly. What's B'kol Ram? Tsar. Because you want other people to daven for you, that's what you should say out loud. Continues the Gemara, and with this we're going to wrap up today's shir, getting to the two dots, Gufa. What's the reason we daven quietly? So one who does sin should not be embarrassed. What was the raya? This is a quote of the Bryce that we just said. Says the Gemara, is that true? But there is the damim, the blood of the carbon chatas, the blood of the carbon oila. Dam chatas is l'mayla. Dam chatas is above the line on the mizbeach, and dam oila is l'mata. So says the Gemara, we're clearly going to see which carbon he's bringing. So how does this work? Answers the Gemara, Hasam kayin hu diyada. There, it's only the kayin who knows that it's differently. I mean, the person doesn't necessarily know. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Vayika, there's another difference. Chatas is nekeva, na'il is a zachar. So everyone's going to know, definitely in an agricultural society, everyone's going to know what carbon you're bringing. Answers the Gemara, that which I'm sure many people are thinking, Hasam, or those who know animals, mechasya be'alya. It's not a problem, because even in a nekeva, you can't tell because it's covered over by the animal's tail. Therefore, people won't really be able to tell whether it is a carbon chatas or a carbon ayla. And again, this is a female goat or a female sheep. Says the Gemara on that which we just explained. I understand by a sheep. A sheep has a tail, but by a goat, the female goat doesn't have a tail. Answers the Gemara, there, if you're bringing the goat of an akeva for a carbon chatas, you brought it upon yourself. Why? Because you had a choice. You could bring either a goat or a sheep. You bring a sheep, no one will know if it's a male or a female, no one will know if it's a chatas or an oila. So if you go and you choose the goat, which everyone now can tell you bring carbon chatas, you're bringing the issue upon yourself. The Bible says you could have brought a sheep. And instead, says the Gemara 1 second. If one did avera of avodah zarah, yes, being a carbon chatas, and the halacha is it has to be brought from a goat. So what's going on? What happened to the Yisai that we don't want to embarrass one who doesn't have avera? Answers the Gemara, Avodah Zarah is so terrible. We want him to be embarrassed. Never want anyone to be embarrassed. But we want him to get the kapara, and the embarrassment is a chelik of the kapara, and that's why he has to dafka bring a goat that everyone will tell that he's bringing the carbon chatas. So we'll pick it up from Kriya Shema the next year, B'siyata Dishmaya.